The Newcastle Trades Hall Council organised a meeting in Newcastle about 1971 or early 72. And old Shunk Kelly, Raymond's father, addressed that meeting, and he called for the need to set up an Aboriginal organisation in Newcastle. So there was this push. Now, at the same time, in 1969, Robert Smith, Bill Smith and Roy Smith, three brothers, set up Smith's General Contractors with $1 capital.
Wow.
And it became an incredible enterprise, and they provided opportunity for a lot of Aboriginal people to come to Newcastle to work. And largely they were a labour hire operation, but also were involved in laying track for the railway. Bill and Robert were two of the early players then behind the establishment of the Awabakal Co-op. And of course drew in people who were working with Smith General Contractors. But I came down here a couple of times because I'd heard that there was this meeting of a group of Aboriginal people trying to set up an organisation in Newcastle, and the meeting was actually at the Trades Hall, and Bill Smith was chairing the meeting, and but that little group, and it was a handful of group, we pushed to help bring about change, and part of that change was facilitated by my involvement as an education officer with Commonwealth Ed. In the first instance, to get some office space for the Awabakal Co-op, where we were struggling to get funding to even pay for rental of an office, and also to provide secretarial assistance. So one of the earliest, a resolution of, I think it was our annual general meeting in 1977, was to set up an Aboriginal cultural program for kids, and also to set up an Aboriginal Awabakal language program for kids. And we were able to use resources of Absolutely to do that. And it was through those initiatives that I was able to eventually make direct contact with Paul, Uncle Paul, who, as you mentioned earlier, had come down to Newcastle as part of that program, really, of students coming to Newcastle, staying in hostels and being trained and then finding employment. But it was kind of building on those things together. And the tradition kind of continued as well, where those hostel managers provided the facility for us to run some of our programs or meetings for the Awabakal Co-op. It almost developed as a tradition where people would come into the area for certain things, and if they had the time and the devotion, they would get involved, as I had done, and all of those others, in trying to advance the community. Yeah. And at that stage, we were fighting for recognition as an Aboriginal community. And that was one of our biggest problems, because we saw the need for an Aboriginal advancement society, if you like.
Yep.
And the Commonwealth Government, which was the major funder of Aboriginal programs after the 1967 referendum, did not believe that there was an Aboriginal community in Newcastle, because it was easier for them to look at, say, Purfleet Mission at Taree, Karua mission at Karua, Brewarrina mission, Brewarrina, Mihai up at Moree, whatever, you know. So they were obvious Aboriginal communities. And it took us a few years and input from people that we then dragged in a little bit later, like Bill Jonas, to convince the government that, yeah, we had a community. In fact, it was one of the largest Aboriginal communities in the state, all right? But it was just an ongoing fight for resources. And prior to us establishing the Wabakal Co-op, Bill Smith had set up an organisation that was registered that preceded the Wabakal Co-op, and Bryn Newton John, who was the Vice Chancellor here, or the Chancellor in Newcastle Uni,
University of Newcastle. Yeah.
Bill negotiated with him to have an office, and it was in what's still now the Union Building down there, across from here, right? The Student Union Building.
Yeah, yeah.
So in those days, it was a different layout to what there's today, but there was office space down near what's general cafeteria type area now.
Yeah.
And so that was given rent free to this Aboriginal organisation that preceded the Wabakal